Coming up next on Pedal the Springs, meet the members of PaCMan, the ped and cycle group of Manitou. Welcome and roll on into Pedal the Springs podcast, where we banter about all things biking in Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region. I'm the guest host, Cory Sutela. I'm sitting in today for Torie Giffin. Torie is the self-appointed ambassador for cycling in the Springs and owner of the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort. And what Torie doesn't know about biking in this area, her friends do. And we are all friends of Torie, and we're glad to be supporting Pedal the Springs podcast. So joining me today in the podcast booth, we've got Luke Prince. That's Duke Luke Prince.
That's right. Hi, everybody.
And Cris Grow.
Hi, happy to be here.
And Karl Stang.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome, you three. Glad to have you here. And I guess we'll get started by, if you would, Karl, just give us a little bit of background on PaCMan and how it got its start.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. It started back in January of 2018. I was riding my bike to work year-round, and at that time, the trail, Midland Creek Walk Trail into Manitou was closed because they're rerouting it because of the West Side Action Project. Colorado Avenue was under construction, and El Paso Boulevard was under construction by utilities, and so there was no real safe way to ride into town. So I wrote a slightly snarky article to the Pikes Peak Bulletin, just asking the average citizen, hey, how would you suggest to your friend how to ride into Manitou? Because right now everything's under construction, and there was no coordination of projects. And so the result of that was, some outreach from some other folks in the community, and PaCMan was started from that.
Great. And the name PaCMan stands for Ped and Cycle of Manitou. That's a great little name. And I think we've got for those listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see it, but on YouTube you can see we've got a logo. Cris has got one on her bottle. Okay. Cris, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with PaCMan and some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, I don't even know how long I've been volunteering or participating with PaCMan. I think it's at least been 2 or 3 years, but it's been a lot of fun. We are here advocating for pedestrians, cyclists, anyone outside of a motor vehicle in Manitou Springs. So that could be students in our school districts, that could be tourists, it could be residents. And one of the projects that we worked on was a crossing guard program for the elementary school at Pawnee and Manitou Ave. Luke was a dedicated volunteer with that program.
So was my little puppy. He joined me every morning. I was down there saying good morning to everybody.
Yeah, we were there, rain, shine, snow, and greeting kids as they arrived at school with their parents. And we got permission from the city of Manitou Springs, from the Metro District and the city, and to utilize their parking lot to allow parents to park, and then we would help kids cross the street and get to school safely. So that was really successful.
Did that run every day, every school day?
It did.
Wow.
It's no longer happening for a variety of reasons, but when it was happening, it was very successful and a great collaboration with our community.
I'm sure it had some lasting safety effects too. So the crossing guard program's not active right now, but it had a big impact, and hopefully we've got some safety for the kids walking to school there.
Yeah.
All right. And Luke, I'd like to hear a bit about your background and what brought you to PaCMan.
Sure. Well, hey, everybody. My name's Luke. And the thing that brought me to PaCMan is the fact that, I'm born and raised in Manitou Springs. And all my life, I've been rolling around Manitou, whether it's on my little push scooter as a kid, just hauling down Ruxton, or nowadays riding my bicycle through town. I've worked in numerous places in Manitou Springs. Tourism, hospitality, seeing tourists in town is a good thing. I like to see the big tour buses. Actually, that's what my kind of specialty is the big tour buses. And I have two little sisters, one of which was in a fairly serious bicycle and car accident where she was in the ICU for a good amount of time. And so she pulled through and survived that. Yeah.
Sorry, Luke, just to jump in real quick, because this is important, right? So just as a practice, we try and advise never to say the word accident. We want to say crash, right? Because accident
absolutely.
absolves people of responsibility, and obviously there are things that can change. Don't mean to interrupt your story, but just...
No, that's a really, really good point. So there was a crash involving my little sister, of which she's very fortunate to be here with us today. And I have another little sister who is a freshman in high school this year. And if y'all know about these little electric scooters, she cruises through town on that. So getting around Manitou, in my opinion, is fairly easy, especially when you're on a bicycle or a scooter or just walking through town. Manitou is renowned for what I call the Manitou back roads, right? The hills and slopes where we all live, like we're up through town. And so in addition to working with the school district to help kids cross the street safely, I just love seeing people around town on their bicycles enjoying Manitou, because there's a lot to enjoy there.
Yeah, bicycle is certainly a great way to visit and to see Manitou Springs. And if you don't live in Manitou Springs and you'd like to do that and want to do it reasonably, you can bring your car over to Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort. That's a great place to ditch your car and roll on into Manitou, check out all the sights and the springs and the hiking and all the great views that we've got. Karl, I wanted to thank you for reminding us about the nomenclature. We try not to talk about accidents, because these aren't accidents, these are crashes. What other kinds of education programs does PaCMan support or get involved in?
So we definitely have a lot of involvement. I mean, obviously, we are not doing kind of our own education. We're using resources from other organizations. So we're using education material at the state level, Bicycle Colorado, the auto-friendly bicyclist, bicycle-friendly driver training, which now have been digitized and are online. Originally, when we first started, we actually taught classes ourselves. I happen to be a league certified instructor, and we actually taught bike-friendly driver training to the Manitou city staff, all of the public works folks. We've also done Metro Transit and others outside of Manitou, but so it used to be in-person classes. Now it's been digitized. And then as well, we also partner with the League of American Bicyclists at the national level, and they also have multiple courses from introduction to cycling, ride leader, and those kind of programs that you can use their material, and that's really good.
Wow, so PaCMan is involved in disseminating all kinds of existing educational information, not necessarily developing new material, but getting the existing material out there.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw in, I mean, we've invested a large amount of time and energy trying to engage the community, whether it be public meetings, attending city council sessions, writing letters, to support, or and even doing. We do profiles in the Pikes Peak Bulletin. So for everybody that doesn't know, that's kind of the West Side Ute Pass newspaper. So trying to show, hey, there's ways to live and get around in Manitou Springs, Colorado Springs, for that matter, outside of a car, and that it is possible. And that's been, I think, fundamental to our success and getting visibility for the organization.
Well, thank you very much for doing all that, and I think it's probably appropriate we'd also call out your wife, Joan, who I know is also really involved in that as a valued volunteer in a lot of aspects around bike safety.
Joan is a force to be reckoned with in that space.
And you behave yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Cris, I wanted to find out a bit more about one of the projects I know you mentioned before that you're involved in, and that's the Match Grant program. So what is that program, and how does PaCMan engage?
So PaCMan, I think for 2 years we have been awarded a match grant, and through these, through getting these funds, it's been allowed us to engage with the community in different ways. We've done events for Bike to Work Day where we give out prizes, Day of Friendship, I think we had some prizes for that as well.
That's the annual Manitou Springs Day of Friendship?
That's right. That's right. We have a lot of fun holidays and events that we celebrate in Manitou, and I would encourage everyone to come on out and party with us. Try to use your bicycle or the bus or some other alternative mode of transportation. As you know, we don't. Yeah, that's the most fun way to do it.
You know, along those same lines, I will say that, you know, there's so many ways to do Manitou, right? And there's not a wrong way to do Manitou, but if you join us at PaCMan and just have a conversation with any one of us, we can tell you a lot of ways to do it right. I mean, there's not a wrong way, but there's definitely some right ways.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it might be worth rewinding for just a second and maybe explaining what match is. I think a lot of people outside of Manitou might not be aware.
Yeah, so MATCH is the Manitou Arts, Culture, and Heritage fund, and it is, we pay into it with our tax dollars, and then there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that go to support arts and culture in Manitou. And so we feel strongly that the culture of creating a safe and enjoyable environment to move around in Manitou is important. And so that is what, we have applied for the grant for 3 years now. We're hoping to get this third one. But those dollars allow us to engage with the community. What have we used our monies for?
I was going to throw in, so we actually contributed last year to the bike club at the middle school.
Oh, that's right.
And
Manitou Springs Middle School?
Yeah, because they had a bike to school, walk to school, as well as bike club. And Joan and I think Cristina helped Evan Johnson, who's the teacher there, put that on and support kids getting out on their bikes and trying that and being active and healthy and all that, which I think was extremely positive.
Yeah, Evan Johnson is an incredible teacher at the middle school. He's actually one of my son's teachers.
Shout out, Evan.
And he put together this bike club, after-school bike club. I think it met on Wednesdays, and they partnered with Kids on Bikes to provide, bicycle education for kids also, and so I think our funds helped contribute to some snacks and just all around helping support his program. So it was a wonderful way for us to engage. If anyone else can remember any other...
Well, I would say I can remember being at some public meetings in Manitou, and PaCMan had a very visible presence there. So there's some promotional material that was created, I think, with some of that funding. And really helps for the members of the community to know that PaCMan exists and is a resource at some of those public meetings. You mentioned the Day of Friendship. There's several other events throughout the year in Manitou that PaCMan has a visible presence at, and I think the funding has helped to raise awareness in that way.
And I just thought of another one. The articles that Joan has been writing for the Pikes Peak Bulletin, the people featured in those articles are folks in our community that use active transportation, and they get a prize for contributing their story. So if anyone out there wants to contribute their story and how they use active transportation to get around in and out of Manitou, even if you don't live in Manitou, but maybe you work there or like to come participate in events, Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, Cris, because we're always looking for new people to profile. Joan doesn't write it, it's the people write it, but she's always looking for new topics, and it really doesn't have to be Manitou. We've also profiled people on the west side, and again, like you said, it's just, hey, you don't have to always drive your car, so here's people that are taking the bus, walking and riding, and just shows the art of the possible for everyone.
So this is like a standing article in the Pikes Peak Bulletin, the weekly newspaper in Manitou, profiling people that that use other kinds of transportation, not just cars.
Right. I mean, a classic, and I think our first article was Craig Burbank, who happens to live car-free. He's also an ultra walker, and so he talks about how he goes and gets groceries, right? Gets on the bus, walks, like he goes to Costco, and how he actually does that from Manitou. And yeah, it's a lot of work on his part, but it shows that it's possible, and I think that's a great story to share. And I mean, he's my role model.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, that's for sure. Luke, can you tell us a bit more about, we haven't talked about it yet, but I know you're involved with a new kind of program related to safely getting around Manitou. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure, yeah. So my objective, one of kind of a personal goal that I have, is to see people get to school safely, right? And so whether that's you live on the west side of Manitou or the east side of Manitou, whichever direction you're coming from, my thought process is, let's get to school safely, right? Or anywhere in between. You could live right next to the school, but there should be the safest route to school. I don't want to say the safe route to school, but there's the safest, right? There's the least dangerous, if you will. And if you were to start at the east side of town, how would you get into town, right? And as a crossing guard for the elementary school, I saw a lot of folks drive into school, dropping off their kids. And a problem, of course, that happens with that is just, of course, congestion in town, things like that. However, it presents an opportunity, and it's important that kids are in school in Manitou Springs. So for those of you who don't know, Manitou Springs is, of course, a great school district to attend, and we have a lot of students coming in from outside of this district. They choose to go to school here.
Isn't the statistic, like I've heard, 50% of the Manitou School District are choice-in students from outside of Manitou?
I mean, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, Manitou is such a great place. I mean, right. we name drop some of the teachers involved in the school district, right? And so it's with that care and compassion that we facilitate learning for outside district kids. So when that happens, I'd like to see stop at the boundary of Manitou Springs. So somewhere on, let's say, the east side, we call it Mustang Field, right? It's the baseball fields on the east side of town. Fields Park, there's a big park. That's where we have our Day of Friendship a lot of times, right? It's a huge park in Manitou Springs, the cherished one. And with that, there's free parking over there. It's just kind of on the edge of town. So if you start there, drop your car, drop your kids, to have a program and a safe route to go from that location into each one of the three schools, down to the elementary school, down to the middle school, and, well, up to the high school even. So have these routes developed. How would you get there? And then, because Manitou is a quirky little, sometimes one-way street type place, we want to have and develop a safe network to get back from said schools too, because it's not always the same route. So as a little girl on her freshman year electric scooter, my sister, I'd ride through town with my puppy dog and her and say, okay, how would you get to school? I'm just going to follow you. We're going to start here, and what is your ideal route, right? So it's that civic engagement, talking to the people that already do this actively. What is the safe way, right? What's the best way to do that? And then it's kind of enhancing that to, okay, let's make this kind of the official route. I'd like to see a network of waypoint signage, not only for the kids getting to school, but as I mentioned earlier in the intro, Manitou it's a tourist destination, and I totally support visitors in Manitou Springs. And if we can do it right, if we can facilitate a way for kids to get to school, we can simultaneously advocate for tourists to also park on the edge of town and ride on their bike, maybe not to the middle school, but to the community park for the Day of Friendship.
Very well put. And I'll just make another little reminder. If you want to visit Manitou, it's not that fun to visit in a car. That's really the worst thing about visiting Manitou, is having to bring your car and navigate these one-way streets and try to find a place to park. It's very crowded little town in the mountains. If you want to visit Manitou, a great way to do it is to come to the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort, get out of your car and take a bike in, and it's really a great way to get around.
I wanted to add to that, when you park your car at Buffalo Lodge, they do have a really nice lobby with a bar and refreshments. There's a lot of times there's live music there,
almost every night,
and community. Whether it's folks that live around here that are just going there for fun, or people visiting from other places, even I've met people there from around the world who are really interested in cycling and being outdoors. These are really lovely folks. So anyway, I highly recommend going there, not to mention Torie and her lovely mother and their whole family. So anyway, it's a really warm, fun place to be. So head over there.
There's nothing better than sitting on the porch at the Buffalo Lodge in the evening, enjoying your favorite beverage. So, Cory, going back to your visiting Manitou, I just wanted to put a plug in for Pike Ride. Manitou recently expanded their Pike Ride stations. I think we're up to 5.
What's Pike Ride?
Pike Ride is our Pikes Peak Region bike share program and e-bikes.
Oh.
So you don't have to work so hard,
I didn't
right?
know that, but thank you for explaining.
And we do have hills in Manitou. You'll appreciate that e-assist. But there's now Pike Ride stations, at Hiawatha, the library, off of Cannon Avenue. There's one over by Fields Park.
There's one up Ruxton near the Cog.
Ruxton near the Cog, thank you. And then there's
Tubby's Turnaround.
Tubby's Turnaround, Shriver. So there's a number of stations now. Obviously, you can use the Pike Ride app and navigate to the closest station to your destination. But it's just a great way to get into Manitou, not have to park, not have to worry about parking your bicycle. Right, you're going to park a Pike Ride bike, and go enjoy yourself and be able to.
Yeah, if you're already in Colorado Springs and you want to visit Manitou, Pike Ride is a really common, convenient, and very affordable way to do it, and it's much more enjoyable than trying to deal with driving your car. And if you do come in, you'll probably ride right past the Buffalo Lodge and could stop in. I'm gonna plug it again. I'm aware that the PaCMan group meets at the Buffalo Lodge. So Buffalo Lodge provides no-cost meeting space for bike-minded groups, and so we can frequently see the PaCMan group meeting there. And I was thinking, you were talking about Torie and her wonderful family. I happened to stop by the Buffalo Lodge last night, and there was some fantastic music going on. There was dueling trombones, and met a really nice couple from England that were traveling all around the U.S. and had some interesting stories to tell. That is such a common story when you bike into the Buffalo Lodge and just start talking with the people that are in there. Cool. Okay. I wondered, Cris, if you would share another story. And the one I'm thinking of, you mentioned this to us, was a story about how your son, who's a student, had figured out a way that he could easily get around Manitou without needing to use a car.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's lived in Manitou his whole life.
He's got it dialed.
So he's pretty fortunate. It's a lovely place to live for kids. Since he's been little, we've sent him over to the post office to buy some stamps, or, go over to the library and check out a book. And, so he can navigate the city pretty well. This year was his first year at the middle school. And as the first day of school was approaching, I was asking him, what's your plan? How are you so you're going to walk to school? He said, no, I'm not going to walk. I said, okay. So he figured out that he can walk up to the elementary school, and there is a bus that then takes him over. It stops at the middle school and I believe the Silk building. So he had that all figured out months ahead of time, and that's what he does every day. And then on his way home, he just walks home, usually with friends that have their bikes or scooters. So that's been working out really well for him.
Great. Well, maybe we'll see him in the newspaper talking about his car-free life.
Well, he was featured in an article.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Sure was.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, his name's Grant. So, yeah.
He's part of the PaCMan Hall of Fame.
All right, we'll go look him up. Karl, what other kind of programs is PaCMan involved in?
Yeah, so I think it might be worth just highlighting again So obviously we partner with Bike Colorado Springs at the Pikes Peak region, as well as Bicycle Colorado at the state level, and the League of American Bicyclists at the national level.
And those groups are all registered 501c3s, I think, right?
Correct, yeah. And for the record, PaCMan is not, right? We're still small and agile, and maybe someday we'll become a 501c3, but we're not there yet. But we definitely partner with those groups and use their materials. And actually, next week on Wednesday, Bicycle Colorado is hosting a Safe Streets Lobby Day at the Capitol. So I know a number of us will be attending, and of course, we're out recruiting other folks. And probably by the time you hear this podcast, that already have come and gone. But hey, it happens every year, right? So mark your calendars for next year.
And for those that aren't familiar with the Safe Streets Lobby Day, so what's involved with that?
So that's, we go up to the state capitol. Usually there's a couple prep meetings, and so Bicycle Colorado does lobbying at state level. They've helped pass, for example, the 3 feet to pass law, the safety stop, vulnerable road user laws that help benefit us as cyclists. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I've always been a huge advocate of Bicycle Colorado. They're actually doing stuff that impacts my ride-in on a daily basis in a positive manner. And so this year, I think they have 3 bills that they're going to ask us to go lobby, and you reach out to your state senator and your state representative and try and find time to talk to them about those bills and ask for them to support those. And so it's a really grassroots, talk to your legislator. And it's interesting talking to both the lobbyists as well as like our representatives. They don't hear a lot from their constituents, which is really surprising to me. And so, if you're there actively talking to them, they're usually listening because they don't get a lot of outreach on a regular basis. And as well, I'll also throw in at the national level, the League of American Bicyclists, they also host a national bike summit. And I know a number of us have actually gone and attended, and other folks at Colorado Springs.
Is that in Washington?
That's in Washington, D.C. That's usually, recent years, that's been in March.
Okay.
And again, they have a lobby day at the national level. So Joan and I have attended, and we've talked to our senators and our representatives, or at least their aides, and been able to lobby at the national level. And again, they don't get a lot of folks showing up face to face, and so your voice can carry more weight than you think. So.
Wow. Okay. So PaCMan really is involved at multiple levels of government on the sort of lobbying side. You mentioned the 3 feet to pass law. So that's a Colorado state law that requires if a vehicle is passing a bicycle, they have to give at least 3 feet to get past.
Correct. So that's 3 feet from the rightmost portion of your vehicle, whether that's your mirror or, like, if you have a dually, your outer fender, you're supposed to give 3 feet to pass the cyclist. And they are allowed, if it's safe to do so, and that's a key piece, if it's safe to do so, they can cross the double yellow to make that pass.
Okay. And it's not required that the bicyclist is in a bike lane.
No.
In order for that to take place.
Right. The cyclist is, in Colorado state law, is supposed to ride to the farthest right as practical. Now, obviously, potholes, this time of year, a lot of sand, snow, ice, debris, construction, whatever, you're going to see cyclists not always in the bike lane or whatever. Or maybe they're setting up for a left-hand turn, right? And so they're going to be where they're at. And even if they're not in the bike lane, you're still legally required to give them 3 feet to pass.
Okay, and then another law you mentioned that I know PaCMan was involved with is the safety stop. Cris, you know about the safety stop law?
I do. I think I was using that maybe before it was a law.
Well, interestingly, before it was a state law, it was a law in Manitou. Thanks in part to the lobbying of PaCMan. So tell us about that law.
So if you're riding your bicycle and you're in the lane of traffic, and there's a stop sign in front of you, and but if there's no traffic coming, you can actually keep rolling through that stop sign, and that is now legal based on this law that was passed.
Yep.
Common practice for years. Usually, it's very unusual you see a cyclist stopping at a stop sign if there's no one around. So it's something we've all been doing as cyclists for years. Now it's actually the law.
Yeah, so that's wonderful.
And one of the key aspects of the safety with that is if there's a line of cars stopped at a stop sign or even a stop light, right, and there's nobody coming, and you can roll up from behind these vehicles and kind of get to the front where everybody can see you, right? All the cars that you had just passed, and get into the line of sight. Vision is really important for bicyclists. We want to be seen when we're forced to use the road. I mean, all of us, of course, would rather have a protected off the street bicycle lane next to the creek, right, where there's no vehicles at all. But in reality, we're forced to share the road. And when we're on the road, a primary objective is to be seen and do that in a safe manner. And so when you have the safety stop law, it allows us to be seen. And that's a very important aspect, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good law.
Yes.
Have we got some other programs or things that we want to bring up that PaCMan has done or is going to do?
Well, so I was going to mention if folks are interested in joining PaCMan,
Yeah,
or
how do we find out? How do people get involved?
that we're on Facebook and Instagram, so you're more than welcome to look us up and engage with us. As well, I really wanted to mention, put the plug in. So in Colorado Springs, there is the Go Colorado Springs Go Coast app. So if that's how you interface with the city government, you can't call anybody anymore. You got to use
Go
the app.
COS exclamation. Is
Go
that it?
COS app. Yep. So that's where you potholes, down tree on the trail, whatever, that kind of stuff. How you open tickets with the city. So the equivalent in Manitou, the app is called See Click Fix. And so, we use that for trail conditions, potholes on the road, all those kind of things.
Debris in the bike lane?
Debris in the bike lane. And so it gives you a voice as a user outside of a car of what's going on in the city. And it seems like a small thing, but yet if everybody was using that, it's really big, makes a big impact.
I'm glad you brought that up, Karl. I was also going to say that if folks have ideas and they're not quite sure how to enter it into the See Click Fix, feel free to message us if you have ideas about how to make Manitou more friendly for people outside of cars. We are advocating for these issues, so let us know if there's something that you notice.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I really love about PaCMan is the fact that it is ultimately just a group of friends that have a common mission and understanding of how we get around Manitou Springs, right? This is something that we're not paid to do, of course, right? But we're passionate about riding through town. I mean, our kids go to school, our workplaces in town, and we just don't want to drive a car to town. It's being a good host to visitors in town. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of ways to do Manitou Springs, but this is the way to do it right. And it's just a small group of friends that want to do the right thing. And we have resources because we care, right? We reach out and how can we do this better? We don't want to reinvent the wheel per se, right? There's resources out there. There's, as Karl and Joan and everybody has done, they find these resources and just disseminate them into the people that need them and want them. And we do it just because we care. At the end of the day, that's what PaCMan's all about, is a group of friends that care about getting around Manitou.
And it might be worth just reiterating, we have monthly meetings at Buffalo Lodge, and again, you're welcome to join us. Reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, and we're happy to share the schedule.
Not Twitter, right? Instagram.
Instagram, thank you.
Facebook and Instagram.
Sorry, I'm not social media savvy, it seems.
So you're not the one who's going to be checking the
no,
messages?
That's Joan. Joan's our social media expert. So.
And share photos with us, too. We love photos of people using their varied ways of active transportation in Manitou. Share your photos on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to see them.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, well, is there anything else that we should share about PaCMan? Maybe one interesting thing I'll share is I'm aware it's not just limited to residents of Manitou. There are members. So I am an occasional volunteer, and I'm sometimes at these meetings, and I see people that don't live in Manitou that join, and so it's really great. It's also a nice time to hang out at Buffalo Lodge. The last meeting I was at turned into a really good one. Great music that night.
Yeah, with that being said, PaCMan, we're in Manitou, of course, but as we've all mentioned, Buffalo Lodge is such a great host, and they're not in Manitou Springs even. It's the west side of Colorado Springs, and as we are good neighbors in Manitou, so is Colorado Springs. We all kind of butt up against one another. So if you ride a pike ride, which is for the entire region, right, so are your neighbors. We're neighbors in the entire region. So start downtown Colorado Springs, and I know a number of us, even just today, all of us, right, rode our bicycles down into town from Manitou, and so we are just right next door. And the fact that Buffalo Lodge is just such a great host, it helps us. It's a nice common ground.
Well, great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Luke and Cris and Karl. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us here on Pedal the Springs on Studio 809. Pedal the Springs is brought to you by the Buffalo Lodge Bicycle Resort, the only bicycle-themed lodging and must-stay for cyclists coming to Colorado. So please check out Buffalo Lodge at bicycleresort.com for more information. And please check the show notes for this podcast. We'll put some links to the ways to get a hold of PaCMan. And if you hit that subscribe button now, that helps the podcast also. And be sure to check out some of the other fine podcasts at studio809podcasts.com. Studio 809 is your local voice for the Pikes Peak region. Pedal the Springs podcast is produced by Studio 809 and recorded at The Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado. So thanks to The Next Us for that. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Pedal the Springs. Thanks, everyone.